maturity that it keeps giving us new things every now and then, and whatever language is today, it's different tomorrow, and it's going to be different the day after. Translation is no exception. And the hardest thing is to keep pace with that change. It's unusual of me to talk about things which do not involve Arabic, because I want to talk about, I want to address even people who don't speak Arabic today, so I'm going to talk about things which don't involve Arabic. I'm going to talk about the cognitive process, or what happens and how we can measure what goes on in the translator's mind. Okay. First, we're going to start with talking about the communication theory, and this theory has come into existence because of the inadequacy of product-based models to explain the daily reality of translation, and it was adopted by Nida and Rayburn, 1981. Also, it tries to account for, it has shifted the focus of attention from focusing attention on product as a translation into translation as a process. Okay, now adoption of a communication theory approach has been used to outline first an intralingual process in which there's always a sender, of course, always of a particular educational, cultural, and social background, who sends a message of a certain and particular content and form at a particular time, in a particular place, via a particular code, which could be words, image, or sound, through a particular channel, which could be radio, television, or print document, to the sender, who is also of a particular educational, social, and cultural background. Now, the result of this communication is that, and the entailment is that there is no absolute communication between sender and receptor of a message, simply because no two people have or share identically the same or exactly the same background in education and political backgrounds and educational backgrounds. Now, adapted to the translation situation, translator is described as both receptor and sender of the message. He is the receptor of the message in source text and sender of that into a target language text. So this is diagram figure. Next, we have Gilbertson, who developed the communication theory further and accommodated situations where all the senders and also receptors. So an example of this is when we have international treaties. All people are considered to be senders and receptors of the message. Now, even Koller, 1979, talked about or considered the translator to be an active participant in the process of translation, and who takes on the role of shaping the message to the needs and expectations of receptors. Now, we have something new later, which is the relevance theory, and it was introduced by Ernst August Gott in 1989. It was part of his PhD thesis. And this is a theory which marked a shift from the static linguistic conceptualization of translation to a cognitive approach to the process of translation. So now we are moving further towards the bank and the field of cognition. Now, when we talk about cognition, then we are talking about the mental faculties which go on rather than concentrating on the text itself. Relevance theory assumes that successful communication depends on the ability to infer or extract relevant meaning from an utterance or text, so that we understand what the sender wants to say without great difficulty. And he refers to that in his book Translation and Cognition, which was published in the year 2000 as optimal relevance, where the sender must make sure that he sends a message, he formulates a message that can be easily understood without imposing on the receptor unnecessary effort to process and understand. For example, if I ask you, how can you interpret and understand this cognitively? When I told you, if a husband is telling his wife, ما رأيت خيرا منك قط, is he saying positive things or bad things?
Positive, all depends. Negative.
Who is saying good things?
Good, yeah. Yeah, good thing.
What do you think? Please raise your hand very in passing.
Positive or negative?
Positive or negative?
All depends.
ما رأيت خيرا منك قط.
It all depends.
Positive.
Positive.
Yeah.
Well, looks like
Negative.
everybody over certain age is saying positive. Okay.
What do you mean? This is
Very experienced.
There is an implication.
Yes, very experienced. Okay, so this is his book. Now, Gab distinguishes between descriptive and interpretive uses of language. And descriptive use of language is when the sender conveys his own thoughts and ideas, whereas interpretive use of language involves conveying others' thoughts and ideas, and within which, I mean within the interpretive use of language, the translation field is located.
As Al-Mutanabbi said this, you remember Al-Mutanabbi?
Yes. أنام بالعيون عن شوارعها ويسر الخلق جراء ويختصر. Yes. Okay. So it looks like what we have in literature, a biography and autobiography, in terms of conveying one's own thoughts and someone else's thoughts. Now, why is Gutt's contribution to the field significant? Because it has drawn attention to the cognitive dimension of communication, and to the extent that he claimed that during the relevance theory that there was no need for a separate theory to account for the process of translation, and he said that the relevance theory will supersede all other previous theories. Of course, this wasn't met with universal acceptance. Now, it has focused attention on the workings of the translator's mind during the process of translation. The result is that the translator's mind is placed center stage in the translation process, and because the conversion and the transformation process takes place within the human mind, which is the black set of black boxes of the mind, and has been the centerpiece of that issue. Now, it has turned scholars' attention to other attempts to theorize the cognitive processes involved in translation, and has prompted scholars to produce complex schemes illustrating the mental processes of decoding messages in one medium and encoding them in another. Now, we're going to now we have these two questions were posed by Halls Montari. She's from Finland. What does the translator do and how does he do it? Now, the cognitive psychologists Erickson and Simon adopt an approach to accessing the translation process. Now, they confirmed the validity of, so the first key tool we're going to talk about today is Think Aloud Protocols as a means of accessing the thoughts of human beings while completing a task. So it's based on recording, eliciting recording, and encoding verbalizations during completion of a task. And actually analyzing Think Aloud protocols has a long history in philosophy, and it was Aristotle who was first given credit to be the first person who recorded and analyzed verbalizations or sequences of thoughts. Now, the aim of this research tool is to elicit a spontaneous, unedited, undirected stream of consciousness type of account from the subject, and the resultant data are messy, and it is the researcher's task to make sense of the mess. Now, participants are not expected to justify their actions, and we're going to talk about the drawbacks of this later. Now, everything looks very neat in theory, but let's see in practice. Now, Hans Krings was the first to apply this tool to his advanced learners of French. So it was 2 years after it was invented in the field of translation, and actually it's sometimes used even in analyzing writing process. But for writing, we have other softwares like Input Log and there is another one, I will remember it later. So he recorded the students' verbalization of their thoughts while translating, and he transcribed the recording into Think Aloud protocols. Now, the data collected were examined with a view to analyzing the subject's translation behavior. And when we say translation behavior, this includes text processing procedures and strategies. Sometimes false starts, sometimes revisions. Now, modes of Think Aloud protocols implemented. Now, we have two types: concurrent verbalization recorded, which is introspection, or what we call looking inside. And the second one is verbalization recorded after the translation activity, which is the retrospection. Now, with retrospection, they say that results are less reliable because it depends on the memory of the participant to keep remembering what he did. And queuing those verbalizations is also another onus and burden on the part of the participant.
Can you elaborate on the Think Aloud protocol translation so we can follow up with you? I don't know what it means.
Okay, we try to get verbalizations of what someone is doing while he does during translating a text, and everything is recorded. Then that is recorded. In the past, when that was implemented in 1984, it was just recorded via tape recorder. Now we have new things with the IT technologies. Okay. Now I will show you now examples about these issues.
Sorry, 1 second.
Yes.
I'll explain to the gentleman.
Yes.
For example, if you take a professional translator, right? You have a PC in front of you and you start translating a text that has been assigned to you. Right. There is observation. Okay? Somebody is observing your acts. And there is recording from the computer as well. Okay? Whereby the computer...
Recording the keyboard.
Yeah, the keyboard movements, that's what I was going to say to my colleague, that there are some advanced methods more than Think Aloud protocol. So they record everything you do. For example, how long you go into the online dictionary, how long, what kind of dictionaries. They record all the activities.
Pauses, corrections, recorrections, everything, false starts, everything.
Thank you.
We were going to talk about that in a bit, but you took testing decisions. Anyway, thank you. Okay, so now it was applied to a participant who was asked to think aloud while mentally multiplying 36 by 24 on 2 test occasions 1 week apart. And verbalizations were recorded, and we got, of course, most people are endowed with limited knowledge of mathematical abilities, so it's very difficult to do it because we are accustomed to do it with pencil and paper procedure. Now, the following protocols were recorded. As you see, it's a mess. So the same thing has been applied to translation, what the result was. Let's see further details. Now we have monolingual and dialogical protocols produced. Sometimes you speak in the same language, sometimes you try to shift between the two languages involved in translation in the pair of language. Activities analyzed included oral to written translation and written to written translation. Aspects investigated included problem-solving strategies, cognitive planning, decision-making criteria, and the focus of attention. Because we know, according to Wills 1977, that translators always engaged in a series of code-switching operations during the process of translation until he gives what we call optimal synchronization. Professional translators tend to focus on global issues in translation like overall coherence, appropriateness, naturalness, style, and text type, while trainees focus on local issues like lexical equivalence, formal aspects, and smaller units of translation. Now, translation process research is important in two ways. First, it helps provide a fuller account of human language processing. Second, it fills a gap in our knowledge of the field. Now, this is some labels and what they mean, and they were divided into two parts: original elements and potential elements of translation strategies.
If possible.
Doctor, took 5 minutes from my time.
Oh, then 10 minutes.
Okay.
We have a ceremony as well,
Okay.
certificates.
Now, the drawbacks is the protocols can only tap into consciously processed information in our short-term memories. Put it differently, they cannot tap into any automated processes in our brains. And some subjects tend to verbalize more than others. Translation tasks are not well defined and not carried out in a linear fashion and take place in a bilingual or multilingual environment. Now, the second tool is keyboard logging. This is what Dr. Fouad was talking about, which is Translog, and it is a tool to record translators' keystrokes and mouse usage while translating. Now, this is software which is called Translog, and it records what is happening on the translator's screen during the completion of the translation task. The resultant keystroke, mouse data, and screen recording data are then available to explore questions relating to the translation process. Sometimes there is an eye tracker which is fixed to the screen, so eyes can be determined where they are looking. Now, of course, this was adopted in 1999. 10 years later, more than 80 publications are making use of Translog, and a lot of universities are trying to use this. Now, this Translog tool, this is the latest edition. It records user activity data, that is all the keystrokes and gaze movements if an eye tracker is connected. Now, it classifies the keystroke data, insertion, deletion, etc. This is one view showing how it works. And here we have diagram showing, this is screenshot showing the pauses which happen during the completion of the task. And by the way, all this is just for 8 words in the full text. Another one, it shows, so here only 8 words are being in focus. and this is from Danish into English. Now, using this sharp distinction has been made between professional and novice translators on the basis of text segmentation. Professional translators follow what they call integrated mode, which is characterized by long segments, high production speed, short pauses, processing at the level of the clause or sentence. By contrast, novice translators follow what we call an analytic mode, which is characterized by short segments, low production speed, long pauses, and processing at low levels of the text. Now, 10 years after Translog release, this software is being used by 97 universities in 45 countries across the world. And a comparison between using the protocols and without using the protocols, we can find that there is some delay when we try to have verbalizations recorded. And this was mentioned in 1993 by Erickson and Simon. Thank you for your listening.
All right, thank you, Dr. Badr, for your nice presentation. Do you have any questions, please? Yes, please, go
It's
ahead.
not a question, I just want to add a note to ما رأيت خيرا منك قط.
Yes.
I cannot think of it positively or negatively because it all depends upon the context. It is a part of. It may mean that you are second to none, you are the best one. Okay. And also it may mean that I have never ever seen anything good in your own doings.
Well, it then depends on how you are saying it in good faith or not.
Yeah, the context in which this phrase is or this statement is applied. That's it. It's
Okay.
an ambiguous statement. Yeah, there's something like
It has
words
structural ambiguity or
or
syntactic
tongue.
ambiguity in
You know,
syntax.
just one example in Egypt, for example, if you say خذوه فسحوه, okay, or ابسطوه, it may mean that he will be, you know,
beating him up.
Yeah.
دكتور
That's all.
محمود خذوه على بيت خالته.
So it has to do with the pragmatic context.
Yes.
Yes. Any other questions?
Any other questions, please?
Yes.
Again, a comment will do. It doesn't have to be a question.
No question?